Hi, biology students. This is Ms. Carlson recording a quick video for you to explain what we're going to do for the next like two and a half weeks while on quarantine, what topics we're going to cover, and also what power standards are going to be on the next summative. So I'm going to screen share with you real quick so that you can see what rubrics we're going to be covering and topics. And so what you would want to do is go onto Infinite Campus and look at your scores for these rubrics and see if there's any of them that you can increase to bring your grade up. Okay. So let's just go through one at a time. So the topic we're going to cover for the next about 2 weeks or so is something called natural selection, which is a process that leads to evolution. And then after this natural selection section, we are going to cover evolution. So we're going to do a little bit of a switcheroo from the original plan. We were going to cover meiosis and Punnett squares and all of that stuff, but out of all the topics that we have left to cover this year, those are a little bit harder to teach with this whole quarantine not being in school. So we're gonna take a little detour, okay, as a B. So one of the topics on your summative is going to be you're going to be given a lab simulation, or kind of like an online simulation with some fake data. And then you are going to have to identify variables. So again, in order to get a 3, okay, you need to be able to identify both your independent and dependent variables. And just a quick reminder that your independent variable is the one the scientist changes. Remember, I am the scientist. So the one that you are changing in the experiment. Your dependent variable is the one that is collected. It's your data that you collect, and it depends upon what you, the scientist, have changed as your independent. So as you change your independent, your dependent changes because of that. If you want to get a 4, you have to tack in constants. Okay, so remember, constants are things that stay the same in your experiment, that do not change. You're going to be writing an experimental question, okay? And in that experimental question, you need to have, in order to get a 3, you need to have both your IV and DV included within the question, okay? And then if you want to get a 4, you have to have some sort of reasoning and include your constants. So why do you expect something to happen? We are going to do a few examples of things like this related to natural selection prior to the test. So there will be tons of practice, okay? This last one on this page is hypothesis, which we're pretty used to doing by now. So if you want to get a 3, it has to be if-then form. You have to have the correct independent and dependent variables represented. Remember, it's if I, then D. So your independent variable is mentioned first, and then your dependent variable is mentioned, okay? And then if you throw in the because, okay, and you give some sort of reasoning as to why you think that this is the answer to your experimental question and why you think what's going to happen will happen, and it makes complete sense, and you've tied it to something science like definitions or vocabulary or some sort of knowledge, then you have the ability to get a 4. Moving on to the last 2. 1.2, that's graphing. So you are going to make a graph, and that graph should have a title, okay? Keep in mind, again, at minimum, the title is Y versus X. If you can bump that up a notch, that would be considered a detailed title, which means you take out, if you're going to take out the verses, okay, then it brings you to a detailed title. Labeling for units, so make sure you're labeling units on your x-axis, label units on your y-axis. So if you were having grams, centimeters, time, make sure you label things. And then proper scaling, okay? And then if need be, make sure you have a legend or a key, so if it's color-coded, okay? The graph you are gonna make on the summative is a line graph, and you will have a formative with practice on that too, so. Okay, last but not least is 6.1, okay? This one's a standard, not a power standard actually. So it's a smidge different, but it's pretty much still worth the same in Infinite Campus world. So anyway, there's going to be analysis questions based on the data that you collect. So you're going to have some data, just make sure you answer all the questions, okay? If you do the percent difference calculation as well, then you can get a 4, okay? The percent difference calculation is going to be the exact same calculation that you did on the COVID-19 research project, okay? That was about a week ago, and you can go back to that to see the equation, but it's V1 minus V2 divided by V1 plus V2, and V is just a variable like X, okay, divided by 2, that you do first. So you do V1 plus V2 first. Secondly, you divide that by 2. Then you take V1 minus V2 and divide it by that number that you just got. And you take the entire thing that you get and you multiply it by 100, and that'll give you your percent difference. Okay. Again, if you're confused about the percent difference equation, okay, I had a couple people message me about it, and we did it through a live Zoom meeting. This is why you should have done last week's percent difference equation, okay, for more practice. So if need be, message me and we'll set up a time to do it together, okay? So that's it. Those are the 5 things that you are going to see on your next test. So variables, question, hypothesis, graphing, and analysis, okay? That's it, and it's all going to be about natural selection. So over the next 2 weeks, you're going to have things like ed puzzles, videos, practice worksheets, a couple formatives, some simulation practice, vocabulary to get used to the concepts so that your hypothesis, your question, all of that stuff, and your analysis questions actually make sense when you do them, because you'll tie it to something real. You'll tie it to that vocabulary and that knowledge that you've gained by doing the activities. So anyway, missing you guys. Hope to see you soon. Feel free to message me on Canvas or email, whatever. And hope to see you at the next live Zoom. And bye for now.